Nā koutou, nau mai haere mai ki te kaunihira o ngā roto o ngā Rotorua hui. Good morning everyone and welcome to the Community and District Development Committee meeting for today, the 9th of October. Welcome, we've got a lot of people in the public gallery this morning, and welcome to Laura and those listening on live stream. Just a reminder, if we could get our mobile phones turned off, and we hope to take a morning break at about 11 o'clock. Before we get underway, could I ask Councillor Barker to formally open our meeting with a karakia, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, everybody. Let us pray. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tā ki e.
Kia ora, Councillor Barker. Thank you for our karakia. And just to get underway, I thought we'd get into the spirit and get our singing voices on and get into a mood. So we're going to get Clark, he's going to lead us off in the waiata for He Onore. So if we could stand and we'll sing our waiata before we start. Kia ora, Clark, and thank you, everyone. Just calling for apologies. I have an apology for potential lateness for Councillor Wang, who is hoping to join the meeting a little bit later. Councillor Patterson is now here. I have no other apologies. No? Thank you. Moved Councillor Waru, seconded Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Any declarations of interest for anything that's on the agenda this morning? No, it doesn't appear to be. So I would now like to invite Ari and Dave from Crankworks. So Dave is Donaldson, our former Deputy Mayor. Morning, Dave, and morning, Ari. Dave is the Dave is the Chair of the Mountain Bike Events Limited, and Ari is the Chief Executive for Mountain Bike Events and Head of Operations for Crankworks World Tour. And I see you've got a bit of your team here, so Morena Korua, I'll leave you to overview the presentation and introduce the rest of your team.
Morena, Madam Chair. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Morena, Your Worship, kia ora koutou councillors and staff. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about, as you've requested, a look back at March 2024 and the future. So with me is our Chief Executive of Crankworks New Zealand, Ari Tibble, and we've got three of our directors here, Deputy Chair Malcolm Thomas, Tumutu and Mel Short, and a bunch of our management team in whānau. So I'll throw now to Ari to get on with the presentation.
Morena koutou katoa. So this is actually the 11th time I think that I've been here. It's the first time my wife and children have come into the chambers to support, so I'm sort of pleased to have them here. I think what we are here for this morning, from my perspective, is to seek once again the support and encouragement of this council. It's not that the support and encouragement hasn't been there, it's that I think in any healthy relationship, we come back and check in with one another every now and then. And so I'm privileged to be here for the 11th time to do that with you all. So thank you for your attention this morning. 2024 for us, March 16th to the 24th, was a bit traumatic. I think we ran into a bunch of headwinds going into the event. We experienced a drop in domestic sponsors as the retail sector and the bike manufacturing sector got hit really hard. I think people had less money in their pockets, and so discretionary spend was down. It's a story that I know that you are all very familiar with. So that was a big challenge, but the rider boycott that happened during the event where the male slopestyle athletes decided not to drop in was a rough take as well. And in the weeks and months afterwards, I had the opposite of rose-tinted glasses. So the experience for myself and my team was that the event had been reasonably underwhelming and that we hadn't hit the marks that we wanted to. However, in the weeks and months that followed that, as our data started to come back, I realised that we actually had a lot of successes that are worth celebrating, that we should be really proud of, and the event is continuing to deliver for Rotorua. And so I wanted to share some of those with you today, and also share a bit of a thought experiment that I went through myself, just to help put things back into perspective. So some of the things that went really well, this slide here shows the visitations. So we had just under 10,000 people attend. 10,000 individuals came to the event, which is a substantial number, 38,000 visitations. And the difference between those two numbers, visitations is like congestion, and the individual numbers is like the number of cars on a road. So we achieved pretty well on the congestion side, and we achieved pretty well on the numbers through the gate as well. We had significant growth in the number of athletes. So we had just under 423. That went up to 440 in 2024. This is the international broadcast viewership as compared to the other World Tour stops. So this is a slide that many will not have seen before, but it gives you a direct comparison of how Crankworx Rotorua performed in terms of the number of people that tuned in internationally to watch the event relative to the other World Tour stops. So you can see the other 3 World Tour stops there. We are second overall, only second to Whistler, which is the mothership and widely regarded as the biggest individual mountain bike festival on the planet. So we're in really good company, and despite all the headwinds we faced, it's still punching really, really well in this regard. I mentioned ticket sales. We were also hit with the outcome of those economic headwinds in terms of how the expo performed as well. We ran a 10-day festival, which is something that we had decided we would do as early back as 2020. And I think that a 10-day festival had sort of costs and overheads for everyone that were a bit untenable, and we felt that through the expo and through our domestic sponsorship challenges. But our Kids Works proposition continues to grow, so we had 30% increase in the number of kids getting involved in the event this year. We had the North Island Schools Mountain Bike Championships, which we co-hosted with the Rotorua Mountain Bike Club, which was a huge success. We had over 1,000 entries from 132 schools around the North Island alone that came to Rotorua to participate in this championships as part of Crankworx Rotorua. Our Educate program, which is a curriculum-based resource that we've developed, which allows students, young people, rangatahi, to come and learn and earn credits towards geography and physical education as part of their experience with Crankworx, grew substantially with the support of our local partners like Rotorua Trust. And we increased that from 504 attendees to that in 23 to 736 in 2024. Again, a really solid growth and good outcome on that front. Despite the domestic sponsorships bottoming out, we still had commercially the most successful year we've ever had. And this graph charts how much commercial revenue we earned total from 2015 all the way through to 2024. So we still pulled in $1.2 million and that mainly came from international sponsorship sources. So even though domestic sponsorship dropped out, the international sponsorship is still really strong, and we still had the best year we've ever had. So whilst it didn't feel good to me in the weeks afterwards, it does put things in perspective. And then with the male rider boycott, there was a bunch of circumstances, including some of the headwinds I've spoken about, that were affecting the riders individually. And so that all came to bear in Rotorua. As the week went on, the male riders, communicated to us that that their intent was not to make the stand in Rotorua specifically, and that it was an unintended consequence which actually made it harder to take in many respects, because we were dealing with the fallout from a bunch of other compounding factors that were completely out of our control. However, on the bright side, if you'd asked me 4 months earlier how we were going to create a platform for the women riders who are competing for the first time at this level, how we could give them the optimal platform to perform, I would have said we need to get the male riders out of the way somehow. And the irony of it all was that they did that to themselves. So it created a platform for the first ever women's diamond slopestyle event, which Rotorua will always be known for. We've now delivered a full season, and it's been an incredible year for women's sport. Our economic impact report is done by APR consultants. They have a cost-benefit analysis that they do and an economic impact assessment. The parameters of that are set by the New Zealand government. So unlike many events that will take place around the motu, we have very strict standards that that research needs to take place under. It's out of our hands, and the report back from APR consultants, which came through in May/June, was really strong again. So $4 million spent in Rotorua over the course of the event. Anyone who says that they were not here specifically for Rotorua get pulled out of that survey, so it's only the ones who are here specifically for Crankworks. It only counts for the event festival itself, and so it is a conservative marker on that front, and yet one that we're pretty proud of. People stayed in Rotorua for a good length of time as well. This is a metric that has stayed really strong every single year since 2015. So we know that athletes and spectators, when they come here from either international locations or domestic origins, they stay here longer than most tourists in the town. So these numbers sit well above the average for domestic tourism and for international tourism in Rotorua. So they're high-value segments. And then another one, a really important metric for us, which is the extent to which having Crankworks here contributes to the pride of place for those who live in Rotorua. Again, this event consistently achieves reported stats of 89 to 95% across metrics such as increased pride in Rotorua and Rotorua being a more enjoyable place to live as a result of the event. So again, that's been consistent every year. So those are some of the successes. I think it kind of pulled me out of my reverie a bit in the months afterwards as I started to see these metrics come back and feel a lot better about things. And I started to wonder how much of my feelings were based upon a lack of optimism and how much were about the real state of play. I think, karakia for me is less about asking for things to fall in fortune, for things to fall in favour of us or about our own fortune. Karakia for me is about granting us the wisdom to be able to read the signs and respond to the environment that's in front of us. And so we've taken all these lessons from the headwinds we've faced and we've built that into our approach for 2025. So a little bit now on what we're looking at for 2025. Last year, we found that athletes were leaving earlier than they have in previous years, leaving New Zealand, Aotearoa, earlier than they had in the past. So by the second or third week of March, most of the pro athletes who come here for their summer in 2024 had departed, which meant that our overall field was not as strong as it might have been had we gone earlier. So our first move is to move earlier. So we move into the first week of March. There's also more stable weather, and we've seen that year over year as well. So that is our first strategic move for 2025. We have a summer series in Christchurch taking place 2 weeks prior. That'll be on the 14th to the 16th of February. We're partnering with Christchurch NZ on that. We know that the relationship with Christchurch NZ is important to Rotorua NZ as well, and that they've been identified as like a partner and an opportunity for increasing connectivity. And so we want to jump on board with that and support it as well. And so hence Christchurch being the destination for our summer series event, which will feed and pave the way to Rotorua. The second move that we're making is returning the downhill to Skyline. In the last couple of years, we've run it in the Ngāhere in the forest, and that has required us to run across 10 days. But in the economic climate, 10 days, we've been told from our sponsors, from our exhibitors, from our spectators, is just too long right now. So in order to consolidate our efforts into a smaller window, this is one of the big moves we need to make, is return our downhill course to Skyline. So that's the first move. With that comes a huge amount of excitement as well. This is a course that starts from the top of Ngotaha and is well loved by a bunch of the international riders and locals alike. That enables us to shift from a 10-day festival into a 5-day festival like we were back in 2020. So it's an optimized schedule. We're also looking at things like how can we use technology to reduce the overheads associated with our broadcast? How can we use drones? How can we use less camera people? What are the ways we can find more efficiencies in order to push that proposition up? With our slopestyle course, which is a big outlay and it's the marquee event of the festival, we're looking at creating 2 opportunities during the week with a qualifying pathway so that we're getting 2 shots for 1 out of that course. We've got really strong channels, so in partnering with the World Tour, one of the big moves we made this year in response to what happened earlier this year was I was offered and accepted a role as head of operations for the Crankworx World Tour, which started for me in 1st of July. It's allowed me to be closer with the World Tour, to be closer to the riders that didn't drop in Rotorua earlier this year. So I was with them in Cairns, I was with them in Innsbruck, with them in Whistler as well. And part of that strategy is to be feeding further upstream and forging closer connections between our team here and that international World Tour team as well, which means we get more leverage across all of these incredible social media channels as well. So, what I thought I'd do just to wrap is take you through a bit of a thought experiment. It's a thought experiment that I used to get myself out of the reverie of the aftermath of 2024 and take stock of the things that are going really well for us. And so this thought experiment is something I thought I'd take you through as well. So my question to you all is, what if? What if you could forget Crankworx ever existed? And I came here and rather than reflecting on the last 11 years of delivering the event, what if I was speaking to you for the very first time? And I was saying to you that for $250,000 from Rotorua Lakes Council per annum through to 2027, I could guarantee that we would lock in New Zealand major events investment at a quantum 3 times what the council's investment is for each and every one of those years. No feasibility studies, no applications that need to be applied for. It is locked in the can. What if I could guarantee you that we would run a global event in Rotorua, a signature mountain bike event that's world-renowned, hosted here by a not-for-profit organisation set up with the purpose of leveraging benefits for Rotorua by a team of talented Rotorua locals. It would guarantee 10,000 people would come to Rotorua in March next year. Sorry, that was my reminder to not go over time for you all. It would drive economic impact and guarantee that $4 million would be spent in our city in March for that week. We, as a direct event, would spend $1.2 million on local suppliers, local businesses. We would deliver 5 international broadcasts. They would be distributed by a global media powerhouse, Red Bull Media House. And it would include content that tells our stories and links our stories and our culture to the mountain biking world in ways that no other festival can. And here's a video that exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about.
Ka pū te ruha, ka hao te rangatahi.
On the 10th of June 1886, two geothermal systems collided, starting from Mount Tarawera. When it collided with the geothermal system in Rotorua, it caused a huge blowout, and the mud went into the air and came down hours later and covered our city, the pink and white terrace of Rotorua and the surrounds, sometimes up to 10 metres of what we call Rotorua mud, which has now become like a sandy, loamy soil. And so that we have really perfect soils for our mountain bike tracks in the Whakarewarewa area.
The dirt here is just something like you've never seen. It feels like you're riding in like marshmallows almost. It's so special.
On the back of that now we have a thriving mountain biking community. And of course it's led directly to the hosting of Crankworks.
Rotorua can provide such good racing. To have it here and in the forest is insane.
It's really a positive coming out of a negative.
There's positives in everything, just like the volcano, you know. Rotorua's brought so many mountain bikers into this place because of its dirt, and that may have never happened, so it's really special.
And so that clip was played in our live broadcast, so that was seen by those 745,000 people that tuned in to the broadcast, but it was also played at the other festivals as well. So that was playing in Cairns to the live audience, that was playing in Whistler to their audience, which is significant. And there's no other event around right now that is delivering like this for Rotorua. So that's my thought experiment. That doesn't count all of the young people that get involved through this. It doesn't count the community engagement we get through our volunteer program. But the realization I came to is that this event is an absolute no-brainer, and hopefully sharing these insights with you in this thought experiment helps you see the same, and we can count on that support and encouragement from the council once again. Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's the end of our presentation. A couple of points I would like to reinforce. The force majeure in Christchurch caused by the fire in the Port Hills. So I'd just like to stress that the Summer Series event in Christchurch is at no cost to Rotorua or ratepayers or to Mountain Bike Events Limited. We actually came out of that on the positive side of the equation. And it's a testament to the collaboration between RE and New Zealand Major Events and Christchurch NZ that all those relationships, all those milestones we'd met prior to that, we didn't suffer financially from that, but it was a big challenge for our team to face. RE's pulling extremely long hours in his additional role as Head of Operations for the Crankworks World Tour, but that's at no cost to Crankworks Rotorua, so he's gaining insights and he's having input into the Crankworks World Tour overall to the benefit of Crankworks Rotorua. And just one other thing, in between the Summer Series in Christchurch in February next year and Crankworks Rotorua, we have the Rotorua Mountain Bike Club hosting the Cycling New Zealand Mountain Bike Championships, National Championships here in Rotorua as well. So it's going to be a massive sort of three-week window for Rotorua. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave and Ari. So are you happy to take questions from the councillors if there are any? Councillors, are there any questions that you've got of Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation today and welcome to our guests. Could I ask, I appreciate in this difficult economic time, the domestic sponsorship was down. I appreciate that. But your international sponsorship was clearly on the rise from the graph I saw. Is there a chance of increasing that over time much more so that perhaps Council could look at how much it's currently sponsoring after when we look at the next contract?
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien, for the question. It's a good question, and it's one that I've grappled with over the years with other major events in the country as well. And it's a question, I think, of financial sustainability and the reliance on public investment, I think is where you're coming from there. I think it's generally accepted in the industry and through a lot of questioning, how much public investment is the right amount for a New Zealand major event. And the reality is that without public investment being at part of the equation, New Zealand major events just don't exist. And it's partially due to the size of our market. It's probably exemplified by the fact that international spend is what's supporting us in such a big way right now, although domestic spend is not. The proportion seems to be somewhere, the sweet spot is around 25 to 35%. We sort of are about the 25% mark, so we're at the bottom range of how much public investment should be propping up something like this based on the models. The other thing is that the Rotorua Lakes Council investment unlocks the New Zealand major events investment. So changes to that would require relitigating with New Zealand major events as the equation and the model would shift. But I personally believe that without 25 to 30% public investment behind an event like this, it just would not exist in a place like Rotorua. So the bigger question is whether we want these sorts of events here or not, and whether we can afford them.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could add to that answer, Councillor O'Brien. So the level of funding from Council at 250k has been there for some time now. And over recent years, it's not increased, but it's actually been seriously eroded by inflation, as has everyone else's. So I acknowledge the tough balance that elected members have to find. But we do look hard at your long-term plan. We continue to strive to have the event align with the outcomes in your current long-term plan. And in the words of Her Worship, we think it's a smart investment for things that matter to the people of Rotorua.
And maybe just finally, I would just add to that as well, is that the event costs about 4.5 million to run per year. And so 250,000 is the amount that we received in cash from Council to enable the New Zealand major events investment. That in turn unlocks our opportunities to secure commercial investment and then to start deriving things for the community. So it is a question of can we afford it, but it's also a question, I think, of can we afford not to invest in these sorts of ways.
Thank you. Could I just have a supplementary? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So could I ask, you say the APR report was about $4 million benefit to the city, sorry. Happy to accept that. But can I tell you anecdotally on my observations, Eat Street and Tutanakai Street used to be full because of crankworks. I've noticed over several years now that sort of activity has been very much reduced. So I fully accept the $4 million. Are you able to tell us exactly where the $4 million lies? Because it doesn't quite seem to me, all events, and I don't blame you, have a certain shelf life where you go for the first year because even if you're not interested in the sport or the activity, you go because it's an event. All these events have a shelf life of some degree. And I just wonder now, have we sort of gone past that activity where we can rely on Eat Street and Tutanakai and Town CBD being full for a full weekend? Because it doesn't seem to me, perhaps it's just COVID recovery time, we don't quite seem to have recovered that. And it worries me that I'm taking ratepayers' money from these organisations and businesses, and perhaps it's not being spread quite so evenly.
I really appreciate that question. I really appreciate the opportunity to raise concerns and then to consider them and also to address them where possible as well. So I'll do my best to give you an answer that I think is as honest and authentic as I can. I think what you saw at Eat Street is also what I saw at East Street, so I would not counter that in any way, shape or form. What we have put that down to is the fact that domestic sponsorships, which I spoke about having scaled down, they're not activating like they did pre-COVID. So what I mean by that is when they sponsor us, we encourage them to, whatever money they put into the event, they keep that money aside to activate off it as well. And in previous times in better economic conditions, those domestic sponsors will actually invest in doing activations off-site, such as at each street, and it brings numbers to the location. So when we see our domestic sponsorship turn down, it also turns down the activations that happen off the back of that, and the impact of that gets felt by everybody. So what you saw is what we've seen as well, and it is absolutely a concern. The event delivers across a myriad of outcomes, which is what I was trying to communicate there, and some of those other areas are still delivering really strongly, even and although that particular area is not. What it's going to take to get that back is for the tide to come back in. I think the experience that we've had is, and you've seen it, and any local businesses have seen it, is that the economic challenges that we've faced have seen the tide go out. And when we get like that, we have a tendency to want to grab a bucket and fill, and try and salvage things. But the reality is, what's going to make the difference is the tide coming back in. And so what we need is those bike brands to come back to the table, which they will do. And we'll see them start to activate once again. So it's a question of timing. But yeah, I'd encourage you to look not just at that particular outcome, but to sort of consider all of the other outcomes at the same time and think about it as one big picture.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā kōrua. Tēnā pai tō, tēnā ātāhua tō mahi. Just before my question, you said earlier on it's worth celebrating. I totally agree. 10 years worth celebrating. And also, can I say congratulations, Ariki, having that world role that you have now. I think that just benefits Rotorua as it is. The question I have is, in your presentation you said taking it to another level of a global event or something. I always felt that Crankworks now is a global event, but you might want to expand on it a little bit more.
Yeah, so the Crankworks World Tours, part of taking on the role with the head of operations is to feed further upstream to get more decisions in favour of Rotorua and to assist with shaping the World Tour's direction as well. The World Tour in 2024 had 4 stops. The intention of it is to expand over the next couple of years with a push into the US in 26, 27. So yes, it has been global, and yes, it is global, and the expectation it's even more global in the years to come. So I do feel like the brightest days for the World Tour are yet to come.
Your Worship, the Mayor.
Thank you very much to you, Madam Chair. I just have a few quick questions. First of all, ngā mihi nui kia korua, mō tō kōrero, me tō mahi. Thank you very much to you both for your presentation and, of course, your work. I was amazed to find that mountain biking brings over 1,000 jobs to the Rotorua community based on recent economic reports. Do you think that there has been a correlation or a connection between the establishment of Crankworks Rotorua and, of course, the many mountain biking shops and therefore jobs that have appeared in Rotorua? I think it's just mindful for us when we think about economic impact on the day. There's also the ongoing sort of capital that comes from Crankworks as an international event.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Mayor Tapsell. That's 11 years of, that was a, I'm sorry, I forgot the question. It was...
I'd just be really interested to know if since the establishment of Crankworks, you've seen that it has supported mountain biking as in terms of increase in businesses that we've seen, which has been substantial, and the now over 1,000 jobs that we have. Does it support our local businesses in that way? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recall back in 2014 when I first accepted this job, going around to a lot of the different tourism forums with TAC Matu, and we were going along to these forums, and we were saying that, you know, Rotorua is very well known for Māoris and mud pools, and we felt that there was the sleeping giant of mountain biking. And we knew about the infrastructure in the forests, that the volunteer workforce, the many hands that had developed the trails. We knew about the unique soil, the cost to develop trails, which is lower here than in so many regions because of their rocks. We knew about our climate, our ability to be a year-round destination. And what we were saying at the time was that Crankworks Rotorua was going to be our #1 marketing opportunity to put Rotorua on the world stage in the minds and hearts of our international visitors. And so Crankworks was one piece of the puzzle. I wouldn't be so brash as to say that it's the whole piece, because there's so many different hands that have come together to make it what it is. But it is an important cog in the wheel. I certainly think that it has contributed in a significant way to marketing and promoting Rotorua as an international mountain biking mecca. I think it's absolutely contributed to people moving here, building businesses here, setting their families up here. I think it still has an important part to play in that in the future as well, because I think Rotorua would be worse off without it.
Thank you. Just the final question. I just wanted to congratulate you on how well you've brought in our younger generation into mountain biking, and of course made sure that our local students who may not be able to afford the opportunity to mountain bike are still able to participate and potentially have this as a career, or it's definitely a hobby. In terms of your North Island Schools mountain biking comp, is there any other opportunity like that for students around the country? And then connected to that, there seems to be no competition for Crankworks. So if there was not a Crankworks in New Zealand, is there any other international competition available?
There is no other event in the mountain biking space that is vibrating at the same frequency as Crankworks Rotorua in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's the first point I'd make. So to take it out of the ecosystem would see a huge amount of opportunities taken off the table. I think in any sport you see that young people need to be exposed to world-class competition to realise just how good they are. And what we're seeing right now is top riders who have crafted their craft here in Rotorua off the back of Crankworks and other events, now competing on a world stage in ways that are bringing attention to us that didn't exist prior to that. So there is a significant contribution that would be lost if it wasn't here for all of New Zealand. In terms of the opportunities for young people, we think of the event as something to be leveraged. It should be leveraged by Rotorua NZ, it should be leveraged by Rotorua Lakes Council, it should be leveraged by our community. It is ours to leverage to get the most benefits for our people. And so we are constantly looking at ways in which we can engage young people. North Island Schools Champs was our way to do that in 2024, but the Educate program looks really like a great opportunity in 2025. And we're only limited by our imagination and the extent to which our partners will jump on board and chuck fuel on the flames to maximise the heat for everyone.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could just make an observation and a bit of a response to both Her Worship and the insightful question from Councillor O'Brien earlier. I think the riders' strike, international commentators and previous owners of Crankworks, the feedback I got was that was a lost opportunity. They don't realise the platform that Crankworks provides for them to launch themselves on the world stage. And you've seen the broadcast figures that were earlier in the presentation. And I think that's the challenge for Rotorua Inc. as well. If they're not feeling the love down in Eat Street, step up and see how they can get involved with the event. Any businesses in Rotorua, this is a platform for them to profile themselves on an international stage, and really, you know, we can work collaboratively, talk to our team, and get involved with the event. I think that's the challenge we throw out there.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies for lateness this morning. Through you, thank you for your presentation, gentlemen, and congratulations on 10 years of what is obviously a fantastic event for Rotorua. That didn't happen by accident, so kudos to you guys. You say this was the most successful commercial event. You say you have a thriving mountain bike community. You say it's a smart event, all of which sounds very good. Like Councillor O'Brien, I'd like to relate an anecdote and ask for your feedback on it, if I may. A husband and wife came down from Auckland for a weekend. The husband came to Springfield Golf Course to play golf. The wife went mountain biking. The husband paid $40 for green fees, and the wife got to go mountain biking for free. It's why do we have a situation where this is a sport that's provided for free when it seems to me it should be able to find a way to pay its way? I mean, do you have any aspirations at all for mountain biking becoming self-funding like other sports are?
Councillor Lee, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a question that our presenters can actually answer. Do you want to rephrase that? That's in terms of the actual event rather than, I think I took the question as being generically mountain biking, which I don't think that that's appropriate for a...
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's both and really. They are asking, I assume, for another $250,000 for the Crankworks event, so it certainly applies to Crankworks. And my thinking is, if I mean, everybody wants this event to go ahead. There's no, I do. It's great, but if mountain biking were getting some return on the great investment that's gone into these tracks, if there was some way that the mountain bike community were generating its own funds, then would you need the support of council?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Lee. This is a subject that's come up many times over the 20 or 30 years I've been mountain biking in Rotorua. So we enjoy, as a community, and so do our visitors, both domestic and international, free access to the trails in Rotorua Forest, lands that are currently owned by Sionaiwi Mana Whenua. And that's a generous access that's provided there. And there are many businesses that benefit from that free access. It's a hook that brings people to Rotorua in numbers that Rotorua NZ's own economic impact study in 2021 provided a 139.8 million economic benefit to Rotorua across the year from visitors coming to Rotorua for mountain biking. So if you were to turn that off and charge for access to the forest straight away, the volunteers that do all the work to maintain those trails and donate to the Rotorua Trails Trust, which provides an ongoing maintenance and upkeep of all the trails in the forest that provide a hook to bring people here, you'd turn that tap straight off. The mountain bike club fundraisers to provide the equivalent of a ski patrol to look after the people that come here and prang occasionally and fall off. And so we're renowned as an IMBA gold level ride centre, and that brand is jealously protected by us. And I think, we can't charge for the trails. Council can't charge for access to the trails in the forest. They're not our trails. It's sort of an ecosystem that brings economic benefit to Rotorua, and long may it continue, long after I can't pedal a bike anymore. I think it's a product that serves Rotorua well. The fact that it's free is something that is a great hook to bring people here. I've completely get it that people have to pay to participate in other sports around Rotorua. But,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. I'll take questions. I've got two more councillors with questions, and then we might just bring this discussion to a close. So, Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te tiawana. Sira tēnā kōrua. Kia ora, Dave. Anui te mihi ki a koe, te rangatira. Just before I give my question, what is it, Māoris and mud pools? I think we're a bit more than Māoris and mud pools, maybe culture and taiao. But, just wanted to make a comment on that. However, I think you kind of touched on it, and thank you for the report. It's great. Tautoko. Like you say, no-brainer. However, wanted to talk about the events that, or particular kaupapa that might be able to package things up a little more to encourage a bit more spending or a bit more, bringing people to town or whatever like that. I think you touched on it, but I was just wondering, are there any conversations happening around that now?
Yeah, I think ngami nuki a koe, and I'll just say that the Māoris and mud pools, those weren't my words. They were my words today, but they were the vernacular of the time, in 2014, rather than my opinion. But yeah, I think there's something about being in a tight economic conditions that force you to think more clearly. They make you have to think smarter, and I know that the team behind me are thinking constantly around how we sharpen the tool, how we tighten the reins, how we create more opportunities, how do we make sure that the benefits of this event are spread not just during event time but outside of the event time in a year-round capacity. We think we have all of the levers and buttons for that and that we're pressing them in the right order, but we do think that the economic conditions are tough at the moment for everyone, and that we will see a lot of those things come back online as the confidence in the sector picks back up again, and we just need to position ourselves to be ready to take advantage of that when it does happen. And a big part of that is just our thinking, our ideas, our preparedness, which is something we spend a lot of time doing. So while I don't have specific examples for you that I'd just sort of be able to pull for you in the moment, I can assure you that that is the way that we are geared.
Kapai, and I only say this, like for instance, if maybe we were talking to the Lakeside Trust or something like that, but it might have been a way to align better our events to get the most out of the people coming from overseas and for the community all at once. So there's a blues festival that was happening, no longer happening, so I hear could have been something to take into your thinking at no cost. I might add it, but just, the event would be way better when the town's buzzing. And I do want to sort of acknowledge at the start, when Crankworks was happening, I think that's, I live at Ngongataha, and I think that's the first time I've actually been able to get through the lights in the area past Spear Springs quite easily when Crankworks is on. So I knew something was up. That was before even it was announced, but to show still that from an economic point of view and a commercial point of view, still the best year, kind of mind-boggling, and I work in investment, so pretty good investment. Which leads to my next question, is that the international markets obviously are keen as on Rotorua as a destination here. I saw the video there. Yep, it's all about the dirt and access and having that collaboration too with iwi. Have you circulated the idea rather with that market around what could Rotorua put on to make it even more enticing, i.e. he kapahaka, or some kind of event that might actually entice that market to be more, to want to come here even more and invest more?
Yeah, we think that, again, if we think of the event as something to be leveraged, we have stages, we have screens, we have opportunities to take our local talent and put it up on the stage. That could be local salsa clubs, it could be kapahaka, it could be local kura, and the door is open for us to do that. And so we have our team, we have a role that's focused on populating those stages. It's really just limited to us having those groups reach out to us and vice versa, lining up the ducks and then getting them programmed into the schedule. We are motivated for that because we think that whenever we're bringing our culture, our local flavour to the table, we are putting best foot forward, because that's what differentiates us from every other place on the planet, and that the experience of manaakitanga, kotahitanga, that people feel that when they get here. And so we think best foot forward looks like doing that, and that all the good things follow. So that's been our experience, that's our blueprint, and that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
An idea, maybe get some of the, Te Arawa, get them an interview on there and just talk about the connection that everyone has here to the whenua, putting it out there, it's a good Indigenous kaupapa for the world to see. So, kia ora, e ngā mihi ki te tīma katoa.
Thank you. Take the final question, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and what an excellent report. If anybody's watching this, that's what you should aim for. Great. Just a question going right back to something that Councillor O'Brien raised. You talked about Council's investment helps trigger the next step up to the Major Events Fund. 250k is what we're providing now. What's the bare minimum that would still trigger access to the Major Events Fund?
That's a good question, and thank you for your comments. And I think it's one of those things that we wouldn't know until we cross that bridge, because it's the reality is we have commitment from New Zealand government based on 250 per year through to 2027. So that is plus the underwrite from council. And so we wouldn't know until we went into those sorts of negotiations. But we also wouldn't know the other implications of that negotiation as well, such as why would council be reducing their investment in this? I'm asking from New Zealand government's perspective in this moment. Is it because value is not being seen? Is it because, what are the reasons for that? And so I think you'd step into an unknown territory. That's my honest answer.
And a good one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one quick question from me. You mentioned the APR with the economic benefit. So are you able to just provide the breakdown of the bed nights that were provided as part of that? Because I think we're just using these metrics to compare against other events. So it might be useful if a copy of that, maybe the full report, could be circulated with those key metrics and the breakdown then between domestic and international visitors as part of that, rather than just the one figure of the economic benefit. If that could be provided, I think that would be useful for councillors as well.
Sure.
Thank you, and can I thank you very much for taking the time to come in and give the presentation this morning on the overview of the event, and also for answering the questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the mountain in early March 2025.
Mihi kia koutou katoa. And mihi ki tō whānau too, because it sounds like you're overseas most of the time, mate.
Councillors, we will carry on with the agenda now. There was a matter that Councillor O'Brien had raised with me earlier this morning, so I'd just like to give the opportunity for Councillor O'Brien to just raise that matter now.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the Chair, I'd just like to take this opportunity for us to acknowledge and perhaps record on the minutes the passing of former Councillor Cliff Lee some days ago. So just like to acknowledge his public service to this council, and obviously pass on our condolences to his family, wider whānau and friends. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. I think councillors will join me in passing on our condolences to the family, and also looking back and reflecting on the work that Councillor Lee did when he was a councillor at the time, so I will make a note of that in the minutes. We're going to now move on to urgent items that are not on the agenda. So in the past we have mentioned that these are items that need immediate attention or urgent attention. So there are some matters, we have a matter today that is a matter that cannot be delayed. It's not a minor matter. And this is a matter that has actually been brought onto the agenda by the Chief Executive through a report. and we will require or adhere to the provisions of consultation and decision-making in Part 6 of the Local Government Act. There is one such report today, which is to do with 20 to 28 Tēnai Road, Rotorua. The item, if it is to be dealt with, does actually need a decision because the matter is not on the agenda. The reason that it was not on the agenda was that there was a risk profile of the site that has recently changed. The reason that it cannot be delayed is that we need to mitigate some safety and operational risks. And so for this matter to come onto the agenda, we won't discuss it at this point, but I just need a motion to get it onto the agenda so that the matter be dealt with in the public excluded section. So is someone happy to move that the matter of 20 to 28 Tēnai Road be dealt with at this meeting in public excluded? That's moved Councillor Waru and seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll deal with that matter later on in the agenda. I haven't had any other urgent matters brought to my attention, so I will continue on with the agenda. So just give you an opportunity to get to page 6, which is taking of the minutes. That's the minutes of the Community and District Development Committee meeting held on the 11th of September 2024 be confirmed as a true and correct record. I've moved Councillor Barker, seconded by Her Worship. Are there any matters for amendment? Correction? No, there don't appear to be any. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Moving now to page 12 of the agenda. I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report Community Safety Phase 2 be received. That's moved Councillor Barker, seconded by Her Worship the Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And morning JP and Mihi. Welcome, you've got a presentation and we've got your report as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I just thought, I'll start off as an introduction and then I'll hand across to Mihi, Tori, to guide you through most of the slides. At some point, I'll just do the hospital pass. I just thought it was really important for us to talk about how we've progressed around community safety. This was a key priority of this council coming in to this term. And obviously, with us having adopted a strategy last year and setting up a number of interventions, we've made some progress and now really starting to reflect some of the feedback we've received from you about moving on to what is the next phase of community safety for the city. So really this report and the detail we've provided is really important around making sure we're ticking those boxes off as something of a key priority for you and how we've actually undertaken that work. So I'll go about halfway down the slide. I'll give Mihi a heads up that it's coming. And then so really what I wanted to just emphasise here was that whilst you'd come in 2 years ago, almost to the day, it took us a wee while to get a community safety strategy in place and for your sign off. So that was August of last year, and in that strategy we really tried to hone in on some really pragmatic and practical areas where we could assist really the lead agency, which is the police. So this strategy and the interventions that we've put in place are really around supporting our partners, because really there's no single agency who can deal with community safety in our community other than the community as a whole. So it's really important that while we're presenting here today, that we acknowledge the efforts of the New Zealand Police, Māori Wardens, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, particularly around their bus safety, working closely with our retailers and our community groups more widely. So really an important part of the focus for today's presentation and the successes we're going to highlight is really based on those partnerships that have been built. So that's probably my throw across to Mihi now.
Kia ora koutou. So I'll move on to the deployment model. With implementing a sound deployment model, we've improved resource allocation to meet demand. We've established an inner city community hub, which was opened on 20th of November 2023. We've had a Safe City Guardian change focus and resourcing. As you'll see there, we've now got a Safe City Guardian team lead plus 7 full-time employees. We have trained our Safe City Guardians in warrants of appointment, bylaws and safe use of gas detectors. We've obtained delegated authority for Safe City Guardians to trespass persons from public spaces in the CBD. Oh, pardon me. We move to the next slide. We've established security mobile patrols that are contracted. We've increased our CCTV monitoring resource. We now have a CCTV team lead plus 5 full-time employees. Our CCTV monitoring coverage has increased. As you'll see, our peak demand areas have increased to 0400 hours in the morning. Our camera network enhancement, that is continuing, and we have our funding from BOPLAS of 129K. Our bus stop and bus stop route safety is up and running and funded by Bay Plenty Regional Council at 86K. We've increased police resourcing to the CBD in partnership with the police, with 2 community constables in place. And our phase 1 results, our camera network and active operation. This is a huge, powerful tool for crime prevention, intervention and deployment. Our partnership approach, it's effective, deployment, focus and intel driven. We've increased significantly our visibility, responsiveness and reassurance to our community. And we adopt the graduated response model, which is educate and encourage, and that mainly sits with our Safe City Guardians, contracted mobile security and our Māori wardens. And then, if necessary, there will be enforcement, and that's escalation to the police. We've had success in the CBD. As you can see in the first column, November 2022 to May 2023, this was prior to the hub opening. You will see the next column, which is November 2023 to May 2024, which is when the hub was opened, and you will see the success in the reduction of crime there. But to continue our success, we've got new statistics that have come. So if we go to, is that the right slide? Yeah. If we go to our new stats that have been provided by police, if you look at the new stats for June 2024 to September 2024, you will see a reduction in crime. We've got violence offences that is reduced by 38%. Dishonesty offences, reduction of 28%. Now those 2 offences there, category offences, are really important. Drugs and antisocial offences, 4.8% reduction. Property damage offences, 33% reduction. Once again, that's a really important stat. Trespass offences, up by 6%, but I see that as positive, and that's positive because we're doing our work. We're actually actioning bad behaviour when required.
Councillors, it just might be worth just highlighting this because I think last time we were asked about the comparisons of previous year periods. Now, the police are quite clear in understanding there is a seasonality that goes on. There's different behaviour in the summer than there is in the winter, school term time versus non-school term time. So one of the things they're interested in is getting that cumulative picture across a year. So they're very much in making sure that when they give us this information, it's properly comparable between the similar period of a previous year. So at this stage, as say, we've got 2 snapshots. and as they sort of move forward and provide these snapshots, we'll be able to get more of an annual view, but it has to be like for like. So that's why you're sort of seeing a second snapshot shot in this sort of way, which I think for these two comparative periods, again, highlights the positive progress and impact that's occurred within the CBD, which is really, really heartening.
We know that more is required, so we need more gains required in the CBD. We need to improve suburbs and suburban centres, roaming dog impacts, the safety and harm issues within our community around roaming dog impacts, and we need more alignment of council's efforts in regards to policy, bylaws and maintenance. We move to our phase 2 action budgeted in the LTP. So we need to extend our reach and wider impact, CBD to suburbs and community. We integrate gifted NZTA cameras and replace and enhance and have a master plan around that. We're looking at a camera network strategy to be developed with police, with the rollout through annual funding of 100k per annum for expansion plus 65k for renewals. Our inner city operational links, standards are and higher care approach. I'll explain what the higher care approach is in the following slides. Focus on our policy and bylaws, for example, begging, roaming, unregistered dogs, homelessness and alcohol harm. Clear inner city signage, i.e. dog and alcohol banned from the CBD and CCTV surveillance. And an all of council approach, eyes and ears, see something, do something. We continue on to our CBD Safe Summer campaign. So as JP alluded to already, crime is seasonal, and so summer is our peak times for crime. So our Safe Summer campaign, if you look at the 1st of November to 24 to the 31st of March 2025, that's our Safe Summer campaign area. We're extending coverage of security mobile patrols, and we're extending the times. As you can see, we're extending it to 2 in the morning. Normally they go to midnight, 7 days a week to midnight, but we're extending it to 2 to support the police with antisocial behaviour around closings of bars, etc. And we've also got extended Safe City Garden coverage to cover the night market, starting within that summer campaign. Our mobile security contract is extended, and I'll refer to a slide where we've got our old boundaries versus our new boundaries. Our mobile security contract now incorporating public toilets and gate lockups to cover freedom campers and report vandalism and antisocial behaviour. We're receiving a police quarterly intelligence report provided to community safety for targeted deployment. Currently there's an MOU being done up between police, district headquarters and community safety. Pound revitalisation and branding, parking building safety enhancement business case linked to our parking plan and CBD strategy.
And probably just the last one there. So obviously part of the discussion we've had around the dog bylaw was obviously a case of picking up more roaming dogs. The safety and the quality of our pound has been acknowledged, and so we've got some funding within the LTP to enhance that, which is really important for the safety of staff there, but also safety and care of the dogs that we're impounding. The last point there is we've got limited funding around our parking building, which remains a bit of a hot spot for us. So it's not being as used as well as it could or should, and so really it's one of the questions we will be bringing forward, just to have a conversation about, is there an opportunity for us to consider that as part of an annual plan, or do we need to defer that to the next LTP? So we're just doing some work in that space at the moment.
I referred in a previous slide around high care approach, so I'll just explain what that is. So an inner city that is clean, safe and has very little lawlessness sends a message that this location is routinely monitored and criminal acts are not tolerated. And that's where our Safe City Guardians and our mobile patrols and Māori wardens and police take this high care approach by providing visibility, responsiveness and reassurance, deterring antisocial behaviour through the deployment model that we've got running. They move on rough sleepers, connecting them to social services where possible, and they advise relevant departments on damage, vandalism to Rotorua Lakes Council structures and properties.
And probably just one other point, councillors would have seen a recent story about graffiti and the sort of the increase in reporting around graffiti or complaints around graffiti. Actually, that was led by ourselves. So actually the significant increase was actually our own staff registering graffiti to be addressed internally. So this is that high care approach. So rather than community complaints, it was actually our own staff logging them, but they had been reported as complaints. So we've just made sure we're differentiating now between a community complaint and us doing our job well.
I referred in a previous slide about our new boundaries in our Safe City community, our safe plan. Sorry. So if you look at the old CBD, the old map, that's our old deployment. We've increased it, we've enhanced it to a larger area there. As you can see, we've included quite a bit more inclusive of Fenton Park. And then you will see that third map, which just illustrates that we're deploying to the suburbs and suburban centres. That's our plan.
Yeah, and just part of that is that conversation with that master plan with the police around where we should be improving our CCTV coverage. There's lots of suburban shops that are concerned about ram raids or theft, and again it gives us the same opportunity to try and provide a level of service comparable to the inner city around making sure that there's eyes and ears available to make sure that either it can be addressed before a crime is undertaken or certainly respond after the fact, so to try and make sure they can be successfully resolved.
Bylaws and policies that are under review, currently underway, is the dog control bylaw and dog policy, and our local alcohol policy and alcohol ban bylaw. And to follow is our footpath trading, traffic safety bylaw and general bylaw. So essentially tightening our focus on community safety and harm reduction outcomes.
And Councillor, just in summary, this is probably the slide that I think is quite important, because there's a view around community safety isn't our core business, but it certainly is. We have a whole bunch of functions that deal with safety, harm and nuisance, so really important that we have a very clear view of how our policies can help keep our community safe and reduce harm. But equally, it's also an understanding of where our costs are created. So you've heard today us talking about the extensions of our CCTV coverage. Again, that's in response to the problems that occur early in the morning after a lot of establishments close, and this becomes part of those areas that creates the knock-on effects for ourselves, so cost and surveillance, cost and management, cost and complaints, particularly around noise, but equally the costs for our police and our health services after hours as well. So again, that's the kind of the unseen costs that a lot of our policy settings create for our community as a direct cost, or secondly as in the harm and safety issues that are created as well. So yeah, just really important for us to have that lens across those policies as we go through them. I think dog control has been a really important one for understanding some of the drivers for our community around a sense of or a lack of safety in their communities around roaming dogs. Equally, we've got the local alcohol policy coming very quickly on its heels, so another important discussion for our community. So I think at that point we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, JP and Mihi. So, councillors, the purpose of this paper is also, if you just go back to the presentations dropped into Stella, So it's around slides 8 and 9. So we're seeking endorsement of phase 2 of this community safety plan. So I'll take questions now on the presentation. So Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and thank you for your report this morning. Just touching on a few of the issues you touched on, the CCTV monitoring. One of the slides said Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 24 hours. That's not correct, is it?
Right, let me have a look at that.
Is that just a typo?
Midnight.
Oh, I see.
So they go from 0800 to midnight.
Till
and
midnight.
we're extending it to 0200 hours.
Very good, thank you. And I noticed the gifted NZTA cameras while we're talking about that. What does that mean? Have we managed to solve the issue that we were concerned about?
Yes, that's correct. So they have continued with their program of replacing their own cameras and upgrading them, which had previously been a view that those old cameras would be removed. We would not be on the same operating system and we wouldn't have access to them. I think the very pragmatic and positive decision out of NZTA is they'll leave the cameras there for us to take over, and they'll put their new ones on to undertake their traffic monitoring duties with their new cameras on their new system. Okay. Just see if the CE wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, just to say that's a really good pragmatic tactical solution. The long term doesn't address the fundamental issue in this case, but we are working towards it.
That's great news, thank you. A few more, if I may, Madam Chair. The CBD extension, I imagine we're just going to discuss that, but when it's now going into Victoria, Fenton Park and Glenholme, when would that become active?
It's currently not active. It will become active
once we sign the plan off.
Yeah, once contract's signed. It's not, the contract is near on signed, and we'll be looking at activating that 1st of October.
1st of October?
Yeah.
Next year?
No, this year.
Sorry, the plan was 1st of October, so we're probably looking at later this month,
right,
or 1st of November.
Okay,
sorry,
thank you very much. Thank you. Just one more? Sorry, there was just one more. Once phase 2 does become operational, is it possible that we can have statistics on what is occurring from the police in our suburban centres included in reports like this going forward?
That would be a discussion with the police. Yeah, and I would see that as soon as we start extending, I would see that as a natural progression in our partnership, and those stats will be provided.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe. Te tia mana o tira tēnā kōrua. Kia ora. My question is just around the, I think you call it the alignment of our bylaws and policies and things like that. In terms of that kaupapa, are there any quick wins that can happen, or has that review been done in order to tautoko the safety
Look, I think, and I'm looking across at Greg, because Greg's working very closely with us and leading the bylaws review processes. Bylaws have to go through a statutory process. They have to be strongly evidence-based. You need to have a submission process. So I think it's the case of moving systematically and as quickly as we can through those. And again, some of the challenges that we'll be putting to you, and we've got a short workshop this afternoon on some of the direction of travel we think is important around the local alcohol policy. It's a clear and evidenced area of problems or areas that cause concerns, and a number of councils, particularly, and we've referenced Auckland, have dealt with those. Opportunity there, but as you saw from some of the other policies we listed, road safety, traffic bylaws, There's a number of them that we think there's opportunities to enhance our operational effectiveness. Even our own street trading policies, really important things to help us ensure people find the CBD accessible, safe, and we get that kind of consistency. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I don't think there's anything that's a quick win. I think we've done the quick win, which is investing in the efforts and the cameras and the deployment models and the partnerships. Now it's the fine-tuning to really start getting some real gains.
Thank you, JP. And I only ask because, it's the last thing you want is trying to implement the plan when you're working against your own policies and your own bylaws. That sort of makes it a bit difficult. So, kapai, that was the basis of my question. The other question I have was, I noticed everything's reduced, which is great, the NELA, but the trespass has gone up. Are you able to expand a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah, I actually see this as really positive, it going up, because we're doing something about it. So when people are being identified as trespassing, we're holding them to account. So that's working in partnership with the police. For example, if our businesses find someone trespassing, our Safe City Guardians or Mobile Patrol will escalate that to the police, and then they're able to then enforce the trespass.
So it's thank you, Mihi, is that a sign that we're more active, or we're just focused in the right places, or there's this better collaboration? So
Absolutely, we're a lot more proactive. Since this hub is open and the deployment model is in place, we're a lot more proactive, and hence that's the reason why our graffiti costs have gone up to remove graffiti, because as soon as we identify graffiti, we get rid of it. But not only that, we, for example, will investigate that and try and support the police as best as we can by obtaining the evidence in order to hold the offender accountable for that graffiti.
I think probably the last piece too, and it goes to Mihi and her team's approach. They know most of the people out there, so the people particularly who are rough sleeping, they've been through that process of talking to them, finding out who they are, finding out some of the whys, and trying to educate them, and trying to encourage them to find more appropriate places to be and take up some support. And it's that graduated response, but it's a case of knowing the people in most of the cases, so you can do that. And there's a point there when it moves from we've tried our best, now it's an enforcement discussion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you for your report. Page 13. You say a number of inner-city upgrades have been undertaken to improve SEPTID outcomes and ensure the CBD is in good condition. That's great. One of the examples you give is lighting repairs. I've had quite consistent feedback from the community that our lighting is too dim, creating a dingy kind of feel. Do you have any, would it be helpful for improving SEPTID outcomes if we had brighter lights around the city?
Look, I'm going to look across at my learned colleague to answer that, but certainly from a CBD perspective, I don't think that's been raised with us. Our issue was actually lights out, which had been damaged, or some of the sponsored lights like the unison lighting where the markets were, just not being in place and not being operating. So that was kind of the image that we were projecting, that we didn't care about some of our facilities, whether it was during the daytime or at night time. So I couldn't comment on any other things about lighting within the CBD because we haven't had any feedback to that effect.
I think our CE just wished to make a comment on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Councillor Lee, I've looked into this matter since it's come up in other forums, and when I queried the data on phone calls and service requests we get through our customer service centre, we're just not seeing data supporting that. So I guess my question is, it's really good for us to act on data, so if you do have residents who contact you, I'd encourage you to get them to put in a service request so that we are getting that information on where it is, whether that reflects a particular day when the conditions, where the lights weren't performing well, or is it something more systemic? So I guess that's really keen to keep looking at this matter as the data supports it, but at the moment we're not seeing data that supports a widespread view that the streets are poorly lit.
Right, so we have talked about it previously in other forums, and I think last time we spoke you were going to check out a few particular streets. Have you done that?
I'll be happy to share my investigations around the city with you at another time, Councillor Lee, but might allow the presentation to continue for now.
Thank you. I think we'll carry on, councillors. I've got a question from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How exactly do we deter antisocial behaviour? I've seen some of that sort of behaviour in the CBD. I've seen the patrols not really engaging. I'm just wondering what the expectations should be around antisocial behaviour and dealing with it.
Not a problem. Thank you, Councillor. As alluded to in the presentation, we have a graduated response. That is encouragement, education, then enforcement. So our guardians do speak with those when they come across themselves, they will speak with them, or if they're deployed from CCTV, they will speak to those people. What we have to realise is we are not the police, so therefore we do not have the powers of detention and we do not have the powers of arrest. So what we're there for is to manage and support, and if we need to escalate it to the police, we will. And that's their job to do.
Okay. Well, this person I witnessed clearly wasn't in the space of listening, so I would have thought we would have gone straight to the end of the graduation response. But the other one, how does the community engage with the community constables, or is that just done through our channels? Do we pick that up, or is there an opportunity for the public to talk directly to the community constables, or phone them or whatever?
Yeah, if the public wishes, they can come to the hub or they can contact the hub and let the hub know, and then the hub can pass that on to the community constable if that's an easy way of dealing with it. But the community constable belongs to the police. So therefore, if they need access to the community constable, I would be going to the police station. But there is that option of coming to the hub, letting us know, and we'll let the community constables know, so long as we have contact details so they can get in contact with the people who need them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I've got two more questions and I think we can probably bring this discussion to a close. Your Worship, the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Just looking at the City Patrol activity, and it really paints a picture of what the City Safe Guardians are doing. And I note that while the majority of it is business support visits, which I'm sure they appreciate, we are still seeing that rough sleepers and graffiti are the main things that our City Safe Guardians are dealing with. Rough sleepers obviously is quite an issue because you may just see one and instantly that's ruining our reputation as a great tourism destination. It's not giving the businesses confidence. What are the City Safe Guardians able to do to help to proactively reduce this? So I think if you could just explain what they usually do, which I think in the morning they will go through and clear out usually, but is there assistance that's offered to the rough sleepers? Is there anything more that we could be doing to support them to not choose that option of sleeping on our pavements?
Thank you, Mayor Tapsell. Great question. And what has been happening at the hub is we work with Te Pukapu, and so what has been happening is every Monday we have the Education and Career Coordinator from Te Pukapu with a nurse, and they walk the beat with our Safe City Guardians, and they provide medical care to our homeless and rough sleepers, and they also provide support. We also have the community constable, because our guardians start at 0800. Our community constable at 0700 hours will go and move on the homeless. So our community, when they do come into the CBD, feel safer. Homelessness is hard. It's something that is always going to be there, but it's how we manage it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to manage it as best as we can with what constraints we have.
And sorry, quick final question. We have a very good partnership now with police. A lot of what we're coming across with the rough sleepers and the continued homelessness is actually a health issue. So at some stage, could we please consider engaging health or social services in a more long-term way to assist with dealing with this issue once and for all?
Yes, absolutely agree. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, final question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, thank you, Mihi, thank you, JP. On page 33 of our agenda, just following on from Councillor Patterson's questions about the expansion into Victoria, Glenholm and Fenton Park. Now, clearly the issues facing our suburbs are different to those of the CBD. So when you say that you want to expand it out and you're asking us to endorse it, what are the measures that you're going to use to go into the suburbs? So are you talking about we're going to have a figure in mind that we're going to reduce burglary by X amount? Are we going to reduce home invasions? Are we going to reduce the murder rate? Are we going to reduce domestic violence? When you say you want to go out and spread the focus, is there not a danger that, with all due respect, and I appreciate what you're trying to do and send a message out there, one, we spread ourselves thin in the CBD when we seem to be making progress. Don't know that I quite agree with the stats that presented here, but we're making progress. Is there not a danger that we spread that thin against going out into areas where we don't really quite seem to have defined, or so reading what's in the report here, what it is you're actually trying to achieve?
I think once again, it's about visibility, prevention, reassurance. And, you know, we're not the police, but we're there to support the police. So once again, I'm going to harp on to prevention and intervention when we can, and escalation. The police can't be everywhere, but if we can provide visibility in the form of a mobile patrol, and if they see something, they can do something. Whether that be they can speak to the people themselves because it's safe to do so, or whether they escalate it. But if we don't have these patrols in our suburbs, for example, or in the areas of the new map, then how are we meant to see and do and help?
I suppose that's a very good point. I suppose what I would be asking, though, is what's the focus? So we know what you've achieved in the CBD. Suburbs will be a different kettle of fish. There won't be so many ram raids. It'll be a completely different set of crime. So what is it you're hoping to achieve?
Look, I think there's difference by suburbs. So we've spoken to some of the Glenholm group, for example, Glenholm and Fenton Park, who are acutely aware of some of the challenges we've had around emergency housing on Fenton Street. So for them, the idea that patrols would go down some of their streets more regularly gives us the chance, and as Mihi's mentioned, to see some of the precursor activity. So if there's suspicious vehicles or someone walking down the street, whether it's crime related or likely to create a crime relation or not, it's that visibility that someone is watching. Someone could observe something before it happens, or catch someone in the act if it's a break into a vehicle or something to that effect. So that's part of that kind of trying to get ahead of some of those issues. Now, if you go to some different suburbs, it might be a case of having more concern around their suburban shops. So our interventions there is less around the patrols and more about the availability of cameras as a deterrent, or an opportunity to catch those who might do a ram raid or do some other activity. So there is a sort of a different approach. So in one case it will be the availability and visibility of patrol. In another area, it may be the suburban centre as the focus. So as to what actual crimes will change, I think one of the things about the observations and the observance of the areas is it tends to impact on all types of crime, because you've kind of deterred someone who may have initiated some level of crime or will be forced to move somewhere else. And again, that's one of the other challenges we've got, is the consequential impacts of that. So there is some wider things here. So we've got to keep that conversation going with the police about the impacts and what that visibility or what those kind of interventions create.
And I think, to answer your question in relation to is that going to spread ourselves thin in the CBD, no, because our Safe City Guardians are foot patrollers. Our mobile patrol go to the wider areas.
Thank you. And just my final question. Thank you. I'll be supporting the endorsement. I was slightly surprised, though, that we don't, when I first saw the agenda item, that we still don't seem to have a plan or in place at this time to meet the requirements of our rural communities. Now, whether that be supporting community patrols and using, various area boards to do their own startups, etc. I hope that at some point down the track, our rural crime and prevention is something that this council can focus on down the track.
Yes, and I totally agree with what you're saying. With the police in the district getting 37 new staff, I know that Rotorua is getting some community constables. I'm unsure where the police are going to place these community constables, but what I can say is we can work closely with the police around that in partnership.
And I think the lessons we've learnt, and we've repeated a couple of times in this presentation, is about the partnerships. So 100% agree. It's neighbourhood watch. It's working with local communities about supporting them on their own solutions, because just like the police, we can't be everywhere all the time. So it's got to be that partnership approach.
Thank you both. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillors, I think we've had quite a number of questions here. So just that slide and the following slide are the two slides which Mihi and JP have presented with the proposed actions in phase 2, and I think quite a lot of the questions have covered off that. So really what JP and Mihi are seeking today is the committee's endorsement for the continued rollout of this community safety plan with these actions in these two slides for phase 2. So Councillor Warra, you're happy to move that we endorse the phase 2 of the community safety plan, and it's seconded by Councillor Brown.
Madam Chair, sorry, could I just clarify? So sorry, is an endorsement different to a motion? Is this just because it's already part of the annual plan spending, so a motion's not required?
The LTP's provided the budget for this, and we're just endorsing how they're then going to spend that money with the rollout of this.
Thank you. So a motion's not required?
No, we will put a motion there to endorse this so that we will use the money that we've set aside in the budget to be spent on this. Is that
Thank you.
The question? So I've had it moved by Councillor Waru, it's been seconded by Councillor Brown. It's open for discussion. If I think it's pretty self-explanatory unless you want to make any comments, Councillor Waru. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, very happy to hear that there is progress being made on spreading this further, our reach further, to the rest of the community. We've focused very significantly on the CBD because I guess that was the most high profile, but I know from reports from my colleagues out east in Tātou Pounamu that there are many issues out there that need dealing with, as in the Glenholme area as well. So it's really pleasing to see that that's going to happen. And I do hope that the graffiti aspect is included in that expansion. I know that would come at a greater cost to us if we are going to be involved in mitigating that. However, from reports I've had just in this last week of what's happened out near Gold's Gym, that's a terrible blight on that area. I've seen firsthand what happens when you ignore it and say it's too hard to deal with in Rome and Marseille. That's just out of hand. They've got armed guards on the streets and they still do it. So we cannot let that get to that level or we'll never get it under control. So I endorse this. I do hope that the aforementioned police resources do come to fruition. It would be great to have a community constable back in Nongataha, back in the Tenai shopping centre, and a rural officer as well, driving around one of those flash four-wheel drives that they've got, maybe even who lives out there. So totally support this.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Is there anyone that is against this motion? Otherwise, I think given that we've had quite a good discussion on it, I'd just like to take the morning break if that's okay. So if there's no one against this, I'm now going to put that motion. All those in favour, could you please raise your hands? Against? Thank you, that is carried. Councillor, you didn't vote, so did you abstain?
Abstention, ma'am.
Could you please signal that, just so that the staff here can note those things? So you're abstaining from voting in favour of the endorsement of that plan. So I'll just take the motion to move into public excluded, and then we'll take the morning tea break. There are 3 items for consideration in the public excluded section. The first is the proposed development of 61 Kawaha Point Road, and that is to enable commercial negotiations to take place. Second is the Infracore update. There are some commercial sensitivities around that. There are also some HR implications. The third one is the modification of the Rotorua NZ Statement of Intent. Once again, there are potentially some HR implications in that. And there was also the other urgent item that was brought onto the agenda, and that is to enable commercial negotiations to be negotiated. So with that,
Madam Chair.
we've also considered the public interest in the matter, and the office advice that I have is that the above reasons for confidentiality outweigh the public interest in these matters. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder.
Madam Chair. As you're aware, I've regularly raised this issue over the last few months. We're coming up to the 1st anniversary now of the Ombudsman's report, and I believe we're still not meeting what the Ombudsman have asked us to do. What you've got here is a statement from staff saying it. The advice is that the above reasons for confidentiality outweigh the public interest in the matter. What's lacking is a because and an explanation why for each item.
Councillor Lee, I think I've already covered that. And the because is because we've got commercial negotiations, we've got HR implications, and I have explained that in fairly simple language, which is what you had asked for. I could have read out the sections under the Local Government Act. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, so I'm going to put that motion now that the committee move into public excluded. Thank you, Your Worship.
Madam Chair.
Seconded. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Waru.
Madam Chair, all that's in the recommendations here is a copy and paste of the Act, and that's specifically what the Ombudsman said was insufficient.
Councillor Lee, I have given the reasons for moving into confidential. You may not agree with that. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Thank you. We've now moved into confidential. We will now take a break and we'll resume at 11:30. Thank you, councillors.